Welcome to another video lesson from the Jelly Roll Club. Hey quilty friends, in this video I'm going to show you how to assemble your layered Dresden plate block. If you do not know how to make a Dresden plate block, please watch the previous videos in this series for more information. Okay, this is just a refresher. In the live stream I explained how to cut the 3 pieces that you will need to make the 3 layers of the Dresden. The first one is using the 2.5 inch line. Next, you're going to use your jelly roll strips you picked, and you're going to line up the template with the 4 inch line. Last, you're going to use your jelly roll strips to cut the final outer ring, and you will line those up using the 5.5 inch line. Once you have your pieces ready, you will assemble it just like you do a regular Dresden. And let me show you what happens next. First, you take the outer ring and you're going to make sure that your outer ring pieces have all been put together just like the normal Dresden method. And then you're going to straighten it out to make sure it's pretty much a circle. I used a little bit of starch on my hand to kind of pat it. Not a lot of starch, just a little bit. Once I pat it with a little bit of starch, I give it a good press. Trying not to stretch it. I forget sometimes and I get a little bit happy with my iron. But I'm just going to press it nice and flat and crisp. Then using pins, I will pin it in a few spots to my wool mat, and this prevents it from shifting around while I assemble the entire Dresden. Again, I check it. Give it a little press to make sure it's very flat. Next, I take the inner ring, which was cut out using that piece number 2, and I'm going to center it in that opening, and I'm going to press it flat. You don't need to starch this if you don't want to, but you can if you want to. And you're just going to place it so that it's got a nice circular shape, and so that it's distributed evenly on top of the Dresden row that you did before. Again, you will use a few pins to keep everything lined up. And you're going to want to be careful not to stretch it too much, so just pat it gently with your fingers and tease it so that you're not stretching your fabric. I use a few pins, and now I'm ready for the next step. I will use a little bit of 100% washable school glue, undiluted. I will be using the glue in the areas where I'm not sewing, so on the inner part of the ring. Don't you love it when those glue bottles get clogged up? So I have another glue bottle, and I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to put a tiny bit, not a lot. If you notice, it's just a tiny bit of glue. I'm going to push that down, and you're going to put that where those Dresden blades have a double layer of fabric, and you're just going to put a tiny bit of basting glue, not a lot, and you're going to pat it down. And this will hold all of your layers together and keep them from shifting when you get ready to sew this entire Dresden together. After you've pressed it carefully, you will check it to make sure that that glue has stuck the layers together, and you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to lay the next row that goes on the inside, which is made from piece number 1. And again, you're going to press it. Careful not to stretch. And you're going to again pin it into place so that your 3 layers of Dresden, so essentially you have 3 Dresdens, are all put together. And you're going to put again a little bit of glue. And you're going to tack those down, so you're basting it with the glue. If you don't want to use glue, you could always use basting stitches by hand. If you want to use regular needle and thread and baste these down, you could do that also. You got to be careful with the glue. So again, I will press it. Making sure that my 3 layers are nice and flat and that my glue is drying in between those layers and that iron is setting that glue baste. You can leave it for a little while and allow it to dry, or you can remove the pins and check it carefully to see if it needs a little bit more pressing or a tiny bit more glue so that the entire unit stays together. At this point, I take the pins out completely and give it a little press. Trying not to stretch and distort my block. I can feel a few places where I didn't have enough glue. And again, I normally prefer to use diluted glue because sometimes you can get a big blob just like I did there. So I just spread it out with my fingers. Not a big deal. I'm avoiding those outer points so that the glue is not in those outer points. And then I'm using the heat from my iron to set that glue. Once I've given it one final hard press, I'm going to leave it for a little while and let it dry, maybe about an hour, and then I will come back and I'm almost ready for my next step. Once the block has dried, I'm ready for my next step. Okay, using my machine, just using a regular straight stitch, I'm going to line up about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch away from those outer Dresden blades, and I'm just going to sew, following the shape of the points, making sure to stop and pivot. If you have a sewing machine that has decorative stitches, this would be a great time to use some of those fancy stitches. You could use a blanket stitch. You could also use anything that you wanted to, like a zigzag, but I just prefer to use a standard straight stitch, nothing fancy. I use a little bit of thread, kind of blends in with my petals. But you could also use a metallic thread or a fancy decorative thread if you wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to your block. I will continue sewing all the way around until that middle ring is anchored to the outer ring using just a straight stitch. Take your time, don't get in a rush, and lift your presser foot in order to avoid stretching your nice flat block that you have. So lift your presser foot, pivot, leaving the needle down, and then continue sewing all the way around. If you feel more comfortable sewing this by hand, you can certainly sew this by hand. I just prefer to use my machine for this particular step because it's a lot faster. Again, you will continue sewing about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. As long as you're keeping your line nice and even, that's all that you need to do. You'll do the same exact thing for that inner layer, for that smallest Dresden plate. You're going to start at one of the peaks and just sew about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of those Dresden blades, stopping with the needle down, pivoting as you go around. Again, if you wanted to use a fancy decorative stitch, you could, but I just decided on a straight stitch, and I'm really happy with my block. It's nice and flat. I check the back to make sure my seams are all going the direction I want them to. If they're not, just give it a little press if you want to from the back, and now you're done. Don't forget to leave your comments and questions below. Hit that like and subscribe, and thank you for watching another video lesson from the Jelly Roll Club.